Tonight we are on page 6 of our Chapter 2 notes packet, Section 2.6, which is complex rational expressions. We've already performed operations, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing on our rational expressions. Now we're going to look at complex rational expressions. Now, all that is fractions within fractions, okay? A complex fraction contains one or more fractions in its numerator, its denominator, or both. There's an example of complex fractions like 5 over 1/2, 3/2 over 5/8. Complex rational expressions, again, you've got fractions inside of fractions. Example, 2x over 3 all over 5 over x minus 3. So we're going to simplify complex rational expressions. Now to do this, we're following these two steps. Multiply each term by the least common denominator of all the denominators. This will clear denominators, then simplify the resulting fraction. For example, 3/8 divided by 1/2. Okay, our denominators are 8 and 2. So we multiply by the least common denominator. Least common denominator of 8 and 2 is 8. So we multiply by 8. And if you need to, think of this as 8 over 1. I'll draw my fraction bar here. And when we go to multiply, these 8s would divide out, and we would just be left with 3 over 1, which is 3. And before we multiply here, the 2 would divide into the 8 4 times, and we'll be left with 4 times 1, which is 4, over 1, which is 4. So this simplifies to 3 over 4. This cannot be reduced, so this is our answer. So again, we're going to multiply each term by least common denominator of all the denominators. So if we look at number 2, we have denominator of x, 5, and then I'll write 1 as 1 over 1. So the least common denominator of x, 5, and 1 is 5x. So we multiply by 5x. Each term here. All right, I'm bringing over the fraction bar. Now, when I go to multiply, the x's would divide out, so we're simply left with 5 times x minus 5, which is, well, maybe we'll leave it in factored form, actually. 5 times x minus 5. When I multiply here, before I do, the 5's divide out. X times x is x squared. Multiplying here, nothing divides out, so we have minus 5x. Okay, now we have our simpler fraction. Now can it be reduced or simplified? Well, our numerator is already factored, but let's factor our denominator. There's a GCF, x. Factor out x, and our other factor is x minus 5. Let's bring down our numerator. And we see that our x minus 5s are common. They divide out. So our answer is 5 over x. Next, number 3. Denominator x, xy, y, and 1. The least common denominator of all 4 of these is xy. So we're going to multiply every single term by xy. Again, if you don't like this, you can write it as xy over 1, if you prefer to do that. Okay, before I multiply here, x is common. That'll divide out. 3 times y is 3y. Before I multiply here, the xy's divide out, so we're left with just 1 over 1, which is 1. Multiplying here, before we do, the y's divide out. X times 1 is x. And nothing divides out, so 3 times xy. So we have 3y plus 1 over x plus 3y. Sorry, x plus 3xy. Now, can this be simplified? Well, the denominator has a GCF, so let's factor that out. Copy the numerator. X factors out, and we're left with 1 plus 3y as the other factor. This is common. They're the same. They divide out. So our answer is 1 over x. Number 4. All right, this is 2 over 1. Look at our denominators, 2x, 1, and x. The least common denominator of all of those is 2x. So we will multiply by 2x every single term. When I go to multiply here, the 2's divide out. X times 3 is 3x. Before multiplying here, the x's divide out. 3 times 2 is 6. Multiplying here, nothing divides out. 2x times 2 is 4x. And multiplying here, the x's divide out. 4 times 2 is 8. Now see if we can simplify our single fraction here. Pull out a GCF of 3 in the numerator, 3 times x plus 2. And the denominator has a GCF of 4, 4 times x plus 2. And the x plus 2's are common. They divide out. And the result is 3 over 4. Going on to page 7. Number 5. Let's look at our denominators here. Put that over 1. We have b, a, 1, and a. So the least common denominator of all those denominators is ab. Multiply every single term by ab. And try to keep these ab's in line with the numerators, all right? Because they're really ab's over 1. So that you can see easily that this is a numerator, and the b in the numerator here will divide out with the b in the denominator here. A times a is a squared. The a's divide out here. B times b is b squared. Nothing divides out. ab. The a's divide out. B times b is b squared. Okay, so we have our single fraction. See if it can be simplified. The numerator is dots, a difference of 2 squares. So that factors into a plus b times a minus b. And the denominator has a GCF of b times a minus b. The a minus b's are common to numerator and denominator. They divide out. So our answer is a plus b divided by b. Next, number 6, denominators of x squared, y squared, and xy. Our least common denominator is going to be x squared, y squared. We multiply every single term by x squared, y squared. Okay. When we go to multiply here, the x squares divide out. We're left with 2 times y squared, which is 2y squared. Multiplying here, the y squareds divide out, so we're left with 2 times x squared, 2x squared. It's a plus sign. And, okay, so this x in the denominator will divide out with one of those, 2, and the y will divide out with one of those, 2. So we have xy times 4, which is 4xy. We can factor the numerator. There's a 2 common. 2 times y squared plus x squared over 4xy. This can reduce, right? The 2 and the 4 can reduce once and twice. So our answer is y squared plus x squared, Or you can write x squared plus y squared. I actually like that better, but I'll leave it as it is, over 2xy. Let's go on to number 7. Looking at our denominators, let's put this over 1. We have 4, 1, 4, and 2. So the least common denominator is 4. So we multiply every single term by 4. Here, the 4's divide out. We have b squared. Here, nothing divides out. 1 times 4 is 4. There was subtraction, so minus 4. 4's divide out. Result is b. And here, 2 goes into 4 2 times. 2 times 1 is 2. So we have b minus 2. Single fraction, now factor. Right? Dots for the numerator. Denominator does not factor, so we copy it. But those b minus 2's are common. So that's b plus 2 over 1, which is simply b plus 2. And number 8. Okay, let's look at our denominators. 1, x squared, 1, and x. So the least common denominator is x squared. Multiply every single term by x squared. That's going to clear the fractions in our numerator and clear the fractions in our denominator. Okay, so nothing divides out. X squared times 1 is x squared. Here, the x in the denominator will divide out with one of those in the numerator. That's 2x. And the x squareds divide out, minus 24. Nothing divides out. X squared times x is x to the third. X goes into x squared, x times. So that's 16 times x is 16x. Okay, so now we have a nice simpler fraction. So see if we can reduce it or simplify it. The trinomial, are there factors of negative 24 that add to 7? 6 and negative 4. So that will factor into x plus 6 times x minus 4. And the denominator, GCF, x squared, x, thinking ahead. If we take out x, I'm going to do this in one step, then we'll end up with x squared minus 16, but the x squared minus 16 is dots, so that's x plus 4 times x minus 4. X minus 4's divide out, so our final answer is x plus 6 over x times x plus 4. Alright, and that'll conclude our video for tonight.